This is warm-up, straight matter warm-up. It's part of an article called Serial Killers Should Fear This Algorithm. And we're about, I don't know, halfway through this article. We will start at 180 and go up past 200. We don't have all kinds of time, but I think enough. So, for the record, in the 1990s, the FBI created another voluntary reporting database, this one specifically for violent and sexual crimes, called the Violent Criminal Apprehension Program, or ViCAP. It never succeeded either, primarily because it's voluntary, making it easy for police departments to ignore. Most law enforcement agencies don't have a real solid understanding of what the purpose of ViCAP is, says Gregory Cooper, who ran the program for 3 years. The frustration is, I've got a car, but no one's putting any gas in it. Hargrove calls ViCAP an experiment that was never properly funded, and most police departments never really bought into the idea. All of this contributes to, or at least fails to mitigate, the trend in the Uniform Crime Report and its supplementary homicide report. Hargrove's analysis of that data shows that the clearance rate, already so low compared with what it was decades ago, dropped from 64.5% in 2014 to 61.5% in 2015. That translates into 6,043 murder cases in 2015 that didn't result in arrests. He picked apart those findings and learned that large cities tend to have worse clearance rates than small towns, perhaps because major cases are more rare in less populated areas and therefore tend to get special attention. This might at least partially explain why about 75% of Canada's 500 to 600 homicides each year are cleared. Hargrove also learned that not all big cities are the same when it comes to murder. The variance is breathtaking, he says. Los Angeles, New York, and Houston are well above the average clearance rates in the low to mid 70s. The bottom of the class includes New Orleans, Detroit, and St. Louis, all bumping along in the mid 40s. Police in large cities with stubbornly high murder rates point the finger at gang and drug-related killings and reluctance of witnesses to come forward to identify the murderers. The biggest problem is that everyone knows everyone. Chester, Pennsylvania Police Commissioner Darren Alston told the Philadelphia Daily News in September, Chester's homicide rate outstrips all other U.S. cities and is more than double that of nearby Philadelphia. City residents in turn point to a lack of trust in the police. But one other obvious problem is resources. We fund homicide investigations like we fund education. It comes down to a local tax, Hargrove says. When an economy fails enough and we have to start firing cops, we see everything going to hell. MAP tracks staffing trends on its website too. Hargrove notes that Flint, Michigan and Dayton, Ohio have seen their clearance rates fall more than 30 percentage points since the 1990s, coinciding with huge reductions in police manpower. 330 to 185 officers in Flint, 500 to 394 in Dayton. When Hargrove's group filed a FOIA request to get homicide data about a suspected serial killer in Detroit, the response was that the police lacked the budget to fulfill the request. What do you do when a city says we're too broke to even try to pull the records? Hargrove says. I joke that what we've done is to create what amounts to a failed government detector. There is a case to be made, though, that clearance rates aren't just a function of police department staffing. Priorities and management also figure heavily. In 2000, Charles Welford, a criminologist at the University of Maryland, published a seminal paper in which he identified the commonalities for departments that do effective murder clearance. Number one on that list was ensuring that cops are able to chase leads in the critical early hours after a murder, even if that means earning overtime pay. Welford's current research looks closely at the amount of money spent per officer, the amount spent per case, and the percentage of detectives on the force. Clearance rates, Welford says, are very much determined by priorities and resources. I'm beyond thinking that's an open question. The question now for me is, how can we use the resource departments have to improve what they're doing in clearing serious crimes? The most discouraging thing Hargrove has learned since starting his organization is how many police departments around the country not only ignore the FBI's data, but also don't bother sharing their data with the FBI at all. Among the offenders, the state of Illinois, which MAP has sued for the information. Hargrove recently reported that homicides were more likely to go unsolved in Illinois in 2015 than in any other state. Only 37.3% of the 756 homicides were cleared. That dreadful clearance rate would seem to go a long way toward explaining Chicago's notoriously climbing homicide rate, just as the president and others start searching for solutions. From his experience with the Gary police, Hargrove learned that the first big lesson of data: if it's bad news, not everyone wants to see the numbers. Lately, he's taken to forcing the issue. Together with MAP Vice Chairman Eric Witzig, a retired FBI investigator who works with ViCAP, Hargrove has conducted teaching sessions with homicide detectives at meetings of the International Homicide Investigators Association and at the FBI's training division in Quantico, Virginia. Hargrove gets the attention of the detectives in the room by using the John Benet Ramsey case as a test for the database. The detectives watch as he selects Colorado under state, strangulation under weapon, female under victim's sex, and 6 under victim's age. Colorado has only one such case, John Benet. But then Hargrove broadens the criterion to include strangulations of girls ages 5 through 10, and a second Colorado case pops up. Melanie Sturm, a 10-year-old girl found strangled in Colorado Springs in 1985. Then he broadens it nationwide and finds 27 unsolved cases, 11 of them in Western states. He shows them how easy it is to download this information into a list. It's like something from CSI. I believe every law enforcement agency should be made aware of and utilize this program's database, Janet Olivia, president of the FBI's International Criminal Investigative Analysis Fellowship, told Hargrove. The police in Atlanta are working with MAP now to trace a long string of unsolved murders, but elsewhere there's still some skepticism about the power of transparent data to serve the public good. For one thing, it's expensive. This is an open debate, Hargrove says. Things are getting so bad out there financially that the mayors are wondering, does it make sense for me to spend my resources on solving crimes against the dead when I've got the living who need help too? Why not just grab the easy cases, the cases with witnesses, ballistics, and DNA, and put the hard ones on the back burner? The answer, at least intuitively, would seem to be that at least some of these murderers will kill again. But if that were true, it ought to affect the murder rate. Sure enough, using his database, Hargrove has confirmed that this is the case. Pulling up information from 218 metropolitan jurisdictions in the 2014 Uniform Crime Report, he found that in the places with poor clearance rates, the homicide rate was almost double that of places where the clearance rate was better, from 9.6 homicides to 17.9 per 100,000 people. It makes perfect sense, Hargrove says. If you leave the killers to walk the street, why wouldn't that cause more killings? The answer is, it does. Others have reached the same conclusions in different ways. In Ghettocide, a powerful examination of the unsolved murder epidemic in Los Angeles, author Jill Levy raises the notion that solving murder cases legitimizes the social order, undermining the ad hoc phenomenon of street justice that emerges in lawless areas and makes people feel powerless. So much attention has been paid to police racial bias cases that another sort of injustice, lack of thorough policing, gets overlooked. It's not enough just to stop doing the wrong kind of policing, Mark Funkhauser, a former mayor of Kansas City, Missouri, and now publisher of the magazine Governing, wrote last fall. It's vital that we do much more of the right kind. A number of studies over the years show that strong community policing and giving high priority to casework can raise clearance rates independently of workload and budget. This is where management comes in. When Michael Nutter campaigned for mayor of Philadelphia in 2007, he was saying, "I'll make solving major crimes a major issue in my administration," Hargrove says. Well, damned if they didn't elect him, and damned if he didn't do just that. Over 2 years, Philadelphia raised its homicide clearances from 56% to 75%. In Santa Ana, California, the clearance rate climbed from about 28% in 1993 to almost 100% in 2013, after a new police chief created a special homicide unit for gangs and attracted anonymous donations to offer higher rewards for tips leading to arrests. In Oakland, where clearance rates dropped to 30% in 2012, the police worked with the FBI to add 5 agents to the department's squad of 10 full-time homicide investigators. In 2015, the clearance rate rose to 60%. MAP has joined forces with a local TV news station to shine a light on other underperforming police departments in the Bay Area. I don't want to blast a particular politician, Hargrove says, but it's been my experience that when you ask a police chief or a mayor in a well-performing police jurisdiction what their clearance rate is, the mayor and the police chief can snap those figures off because they're paying attention, as are the police in Austin. Van, the Gary murderer, was caught not long after moving back to Indiana from Texas, where he'd spent a number of years. While Hargrove never heard back from the Gary police, he did hear from the police in Austin. They said, "We need to know whether he could have killed anyone here." Hargrove sent the Austin police data on every strangulation death in Texas. It looked like Van had kept his nose clean. Hargrove couldn't see any cases where that matched his pattern. They must have agreed, Hargrove says, so that's kind of a consultation. The first, perhaps, of many.